Welcome to another episode of Find Your Free, the podcast. I am your hostess, Rachel Voss, and I'm actually testing out a new microphone this morning, and I'm doing this podcast again on early Monday morning. So if you listened to episode 12 from last week, I got into how I had a little bit of a podcast scheduling change and was giving early Monday morning a try, and here I am again. So new morning, new mic, and hopefully this sound carries through. It actually is a workaround. The regular mic just suddenly decided to stop working. So thankfully, living and loving a recording artist, there is always a workaround. So here we are. So happy new week, even though this won't be out until Tuesday. Tuesday's still fairly early enough in the week. So happy new week to you. I hope that your week is off to a great start and that it is one that is peaceful and easeful. So for today's episode, I wanted to talk about paying it forward. This episode is inspired by the very, very, very generous donation I received from a yoga student / benefactor last week. And they called me up out the blue and they said, listen, I received this spiritual download that I am to buy a certain amount of weekly passes for next week, and I'm to buy a certain amount of passes for folks who are experiencing financial hardship right now, maybe dealing with some mental health challenges, maybe in need of community. For those folks, I'm to buy 5, monthly passes for those folks. And it was just this really beautiful, generous offer. And I'm like, wait, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, no, she's like, I got this message last night. I slept on it to be sure. And, it was still with me this morning. Like Spirit was telling me this is what I need to do. So I'm going to do this because when I honor, what Spirit says to me, I am blessed and rewarded, in the long run. So I received this beautiful offer. I have tears in my eyes. I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. It's just moments like that, that just remind me, I'm on the right path. So immediately put the message out, that there are, 5 monthly passes available, at no cost, for folks in need. And those spaces were immediately filled up. So it's just beautiful to see the offer and beautiful to see the response. And that really inspired what I wanted to talk about today, which is paying it forward, right? When you are creative and you are in your space with whatever it is you offer, whether you are a physical artist, a dance artist, a yoga teacher, a healer, a spiritual guy, whatever your creative offering, your unique gift that you're willing to give to the world, getting to a place, unless you were just kind of born into it or, you just have had financial success, but getting to that place when you're building it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, right? When you're trying to make your creative offering like your way of life and your means for income, getting there can be a tough road. It can be a challenging road, and it is filled with moments of what am I doing? Am I on the right path? Should I just go back to work? Should I just, all these different things? And I have found it's usually in those moments where it's man, I think I might just need to throw in the towel. I don't know. This is crazy, that some offer, right? This completely comes out of the blue, and it's confirmation that you're on the right path. And it's not that I was necessarily in a place last week where I was like, oh, am I on the right path? I mean, I love what I do. I'm grateful to be able to do this work, to offer this work. I'm grateful for, the support of a mate, for just allowing me the space to figure it out, but just there are just days when I'm like, what am I doing? But last week wasn't one of those days. Last week was more a day of, speaking from the heart. It was just one of those days of all right, how am I going to get these bills paid? So I am successful in my business. I've been here 6 years and going. I'm really now just figuring out how to take things to the next level now that we are in this virtual world, and moving into this virtual space actually opened up a lot of clarity for me in terms of how I want to move, you know? And so I'm finally, after 6 years, finally able to figure out, okay, how can I take, you know, this next step to level up Rachel Voss Yoga? But, you know, there's a certain financial goal I'm looking to hit, and I'm still working my way there. And while I work my way there, there's life in between, right? I have a kid, I have a dog, you know, we have a home we have to take care of. And so there are just responsibilities that come with that. And, you know, during this past school year, we decided to enroll my son in a private school, private Montessori school that is so wonderful for him. We did get a scholarship, thankfully, but it's still a little bit of a price tag. And so, you know, always trying to make sure I've got that covered. Like, I want to make sure I have that covered before we got the rent covered, you know? So just one of those days of like, okay, how am I going to, you know, get this and make sure that that I still have this, and, you know, all of that, just those human moments of trying to like pay the bills, right? And manage your family. And I was in that space when I got the call, and it was just like, oh my God, like, you know, this is just like, it's going to be okay. You know, it's going to be okay. Like, just keep doing your work. People see what you're doing. People see and recognize that, like, yeah, you know, you have this gift of like yoga to teach, and you have this gift as a teacher, you know, as one who shares information. But the gift I'm also trying to offer is the space of community, you know, right now the community is a certain size, and it's growing, and it's one where I'm able to personally interact, where I'm able to really connect with everybody's story, and, you know, just kind of have a sense of what people are going through in their lives, or what paths they're on, or things like that, right? Yeah, the goal is for this community to continue expanding, whether through this podcast, whether maybe just on Instagram, whatever it is. The goal is for the community to expand and to always have my touch and presence. But like right now, while it's still in this space of building and I can really personally interact with everybody, it's like I'm really big, you know, on growing and establishing and having this community. And so it's like to not only see my work as a yoga teacher, but to say, I'm supporting your work as a teacher, but I'm also supporting the needs of your community. This student may know like one other person, you know, in the group of people that attend my online classes. All of the other people that her gift is, you know, going towards and her gift is being used for, it's like she doesn't know them, you know, but that's her gift to the community. And, you know, again, the community is a reflection of the work that I want to offer. And so just having that recognized is just like beautiful confirmation. And so then that got me to thinking about a time, just not just around this time last year, because we are now getting into the week when life began to close. Like, it's just, you know, I've been seeing all these memes on like social media over the weekend of like, yeah, this was the last full week of life before everything changed. And so we are definitely in that space. But it was more towards the summertime where a yoga friend had just messaged me out the blue. It's like, hey, Rachel, like, what's your mailing address? And I gave my mailing address. And, you know, I thought, I just actually didn't even think anything of it. I just gave my mailing address. Like, oh, I guess they're just going to share some information, whatever. And over time, like, I'm checking my mail one day, and there was a card from this friend with a note, a beautiful note, and a beautiful monetary donation for, you know, just what I'm doing. And it was just like, keep doing what you're doing. And it was like, I was kind of, now last year at the time when that card came, I was in the space of paying bills and like questioning myself, like, what am I doing? I was definitely having like one of those weeks. And it just came out of the blue. And I'll tell you a little something funny about myself. And I'm quite sure I'm not the only one, but like, every day when I go to the mailbox, or every other day when I go to the mailbox, right? Because like I've mentioned in previous episodes, we live in a townhouse community, so there's the whole shared mailbox bit. And so I may go to the mailbox every day, every other day. And so when I go, each time I go, it's like I go with the attitude of expecting something to be there for me. And usually I expect it to be financial, right? So it's like that, you know, that attraction mentality, right? That affirmation mentality. Like, yeah, thank you for that random check that's just going to pop up in the mail. And No, it doesn't happen every single time, but it's happened enough like over the years where I've gotten random checks that have come in a moment where it's like, oh man, I could really use this. Or, oh man, like what a blessing. And it could be, a generous gift from someone. It could be, it's been, I remember this when I first, when I first, left the corporate world, like within that first year, I always talk about how I didn't have a real plan. I didn't have a real savings. Like I tapped into 401k. Like that was how I was willing to move to get Rachel Voss Yoga going. And I had come to a space where I was like, all right, I've come too far to go back, but I'm a little stuck with how to go forward. And at that point, it was like financially or whatever. Because I just hadn't built up the clientele just yet to kind of keep everything going. I didn't have like a, supplemental income just yet. It was like strictly just me teaching yoga classes and like living off of, the 401k savings that, I allowed myself to take out. So when that started to kind of like come to an end, it was like, oh shit, like what am I going to do now? And this letter kept coming from my company about like, oh, something your pension. But I didn't pay attention to it because I just didn't think like I had pension. I was just like, I know I have this 401k and, whatever vacation days I had left when I left the job, like stuff like that. But I was like, I didn't recall anything about a pension. So I just thought it was something that was coming by way of me maybe still being on the employee roster, and it was just some information about it. So, I just kept like ignoring it, to be honest. And then one day this letter comes in, and on the outside, it's like urgent action required. And so I was like, well, all right, let me open it up. And there have definitely, we've all gotten those letters that say urgent action required. And then you go in and then it's like, hey, we have this warranty for your car. And it's like, so I'm like, all right, well, let me open it up. And sure enough, it was a letter directed, or addressed directly to me. And it was just like, hey, Rachel, like you have this money like in your pension, you know what I mean? Like it didn't roll over into your 401k. And I remembered like, as I'm reading this letter, I'm like, oh my God, I had pension from the job previously, the job that I had previous to joining the company that I ultimately left from. And that money I remember bringing over to, the company I went to. And, there was a point where the company I went to had like a pension thing and then that stopped or whatever. But so I just forgot about it. Because I got so focused on like building the 401k, especially once like the pension plan kind of went away. I just focused on the 401k and completely forgot. So it was like, yeah, like you have $13,000 you need to claim or it's just going to like go away. And I'm like, oh shit, $13,000. And when I tell you, before I got that letter, I was having a thought of like, geez, I wish I could just get like $10,000, like just $10,000 would like keep me, going for the next couple of months or whatever. And $13,000 on the nose. And so, yeah, and so, you know what I mean? So that has happened. I'm always like signing up. It may seem silly, but when you do it one time and you get a response from it, it's like, well, I'm gonna just do it all the time. But like, when you get those like class action settlement cards, like, oh, your business, your card, your whatever was, involved in this thing, and they did wrong, and so there might be money entitled, or you might be entitled to money, so you like fill out the little card or whatever. And I've done that over the years, and I just kind of send it off knowing it's going to be pennies on the dollar, but I'm like, whatever, like if it's something I'm entitled to, like give it to me, especially if it's a company like I paid, bills to and stuff like that. And so even just sending those cards off, or, now it's like you fill out the information on the internet and then you like send it off, and then I just like forget about it. And then like, again, going to the mail with this like attitude of like expectation, like I'll get a check for 30, I'll get a check for 60. I've gotten one time for like 150. And, one of those checks, a larger one, larger by way of like 100, 150, came during a day when it was like, oh, I got to rob Peter to pay Paul, and so it works. It has worked. And so, to have that thought, like every day of going to the mailbox of like, something's going to be there, something unexpected is going to be there. And I had that gift from my yoga friend last week, same thing. I just like came in the house, opened up the card and like shook, when I like opened up and saw the gift, like literally like my hands are shaking. I'm tearing up because it's just like, I believe in this this work that I'm doing. And it feels, in a world where it's like, what you're following, and you've got to have 10,000 followers base, or 5,000, or a million, and to be an influencer, and all this different stuff. Like when you have like your little community that you're trying to build in that space, and it's a loving, fulfilling, engaging community, but then you try to take advantage of some of the social media stuff, like like partner with us, get influencer type stuff. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't have 10,000 followers. I have 1780. When I last looked, I had 1780. And, and I'm like, maybe they'll see that. Maybe they'll see, the engagement, the interaction on my page, whatever it is that they look at when they are deciding about this influence stuff. I'm like, oh, I'll give it a shot. And then it's like, you're told like, oh, you don't have the number of followers. Oh, like you don't have the presence. And like, when you get the presence, come check for us. And it's like, but I'm doing the work. And so, when we are in this world now, this new social media, e-commerce world, and you're trying to like, carve out your little niche, you know what I mean? It can just feel sometimes overwhelming, and sometimes like just daunting, and just like, what am I doing? But then I remind myself of why I got into this work in the first place. I didn't leave my corporate job, my 6-figure corporate job, to get 10,000 followers per se, right? I didn't leave my corporate job to like get a sponsorship with whoever, to become like a known influencer. Like I didn't do that. I left to do the work. I left to follow my heart. I left to be of service to others, because that feeling was tugging on my heart so much and for so long that I was like, I have to honor that. When I taught my first yoga class, and I've talked about that in a couple of episodes, like the feeling of like, this is it. Like I have arrived in the land of purpose, and I still had to navigate that land, but this is it. Like I have arrived. I knew this was the path that would open me up to the service work that I wanted to see myself do in this world, and that I knew would fulfill me. So I left my corporate job to be of service. I didn't, I had visions of like, I'm going to grow and, just be like known and, all this type of stuff. Like, you know what I mean? You want to grow your community, but I didn't think about like a specific number. I was just like, I just want to be known, and I want to get out there, and I want to do my thing too, and you see how other people are creating their lifestyle brands and their yoga brands and all this. And it's like, all right, well, yeah, I want to do that too. And, some of it is just timing, luck, opportunity, all these different things play, into, how things pan out as far as like success, and especially with like social media. Right. But it wasn't like, I'm not stepping out. Like even when I stepped out, it was 2015, and like Instagram was still like the normal algorithm of like, I see people I see people in real time as I log in, and hey, I hope they like my post. Like it wasn't the stories. It wasn't like the sponsorships. There were no ads. It was like just pictures and people. And that was like it. Right. So, at that stage, it was just seeing yoga teachers and pages where there were large followers, and me seeing people be able to offer their work in that way. And so I was like, all right, I want to figure that out. But it wasn't specifically to become or do like the social media influencing thing like that. That's not why. And so it's like, all right, well, I'm going to use social media for the marketing tool it is, because it is a way to connect. Like there are pros and cons of it all, right? Sometimes I feel more cons than pros, but there's a place for it, and I'm going to use it. And, when I'm in downtime or just whatever, like I enjoy it. I've seen a lot of funny stuff on Instagram, so whatever. But in any event, I have to remind myself often that it's not about like this influencing thing that I'm trying to get caught up in, but in the world of it, right? It can be like, what am I doing? Like, how can I figure this out as I continue to build, my business or whatever? And so when you're in that space and you're trying to figure out how to expand and it's not happening, and you see yourself do your post and it gets however many likes, and then you see later on somebody else, does a similar post with a similar thing that gets like 10, 100 times like the amount of like likes or interaction you got. Or it's like you post something like, hey, I'm doing this event, and you get a lot of likes, but it only converts into so much like actual, business. Like it can just be kind of like, how does this land work? Like, what am I doing? And it can really kind of shake the foundation of like just what you're doing overall. So I'm saying all that to say that when I have gotten into those spaces of questioning myself, like these generous, donations have just come in out of the blue, like, and it's that sign from the universe, keep going, And so now for me, in this world of social media, it's almost like, I think about some of the, I guess I'll call them the primary earlier yoga teachers, right? So Rodney Yee, if anybody's familiar with Rodney Yee, or Patricia Walden, or, if anybody came up learning yoga at some point on VHS tapes, if we remember those videotapes. My first yoga videotape was AM PM yoga with Rodney Yee and Patricia Walden, and I used to like practice that all the time. But yeah, like there was no social media when these teachers, were out and finding success. Like it was word of mouth. It was, just building without the presence of like Instagram, Facebook fanfare. It was like mailing lists, like literal hard mail, you know what I mean? Like physical mail, mailing list. It was like, getting your videotape out there. And so now it's like, okay, how do we use this social media world to build business? And now the way that I am, I'm kind of rebellious Scorpio. Like I'm almost like, well, now how can I build my business in spite of what everybody else is doing on Instagram, right? How can I use that old school model to build myself? Like, yeah, I would want a nice Instagram community if it meant that I could get income, from that would support my work and open up, doors for new things or whatever like that, right? But I'm not trying to sell my soul for it either, right? Like I want a community that, like I said, even if it grows to a point where I'm not able to interact, like if it got so big that I couldn't interact personally with every, single person in the community, I still want it to be a community that has like my presence and my feeling, and that the people, in the community are a reflection of the work. You know what I mean? It's like the whole vibe, attracting the tribe thing, right? And so the people who continue to grow your community, the people who continue to engage, like they are all reflections of, again, yeah, of the work, I was going to say of me, but that's not, I feel like that's egotistical. It's not that they're reflections of me, but it's reflection of the work that I'm trying to, that I'm trying to offer in this world. And so I would love, if the community grows to a certain number, like, yeah, to be a reflection of that, to be a reflection of the presence, is what I'm trying to say, that I want to have like in this world. And so, but I'm really trying to figure out now, like how to go against that grain and go back to the old school model. I may have said this in a podcast or two before, but I remember there was a yoga teacher who I was following at the time. And I think it was just before the pandemic. Everything is so mushed now. I don't know if this was 2019 or 2020, but there was one day where she went on and she, kind of did like a Instagram live about kind of the same thing of what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, there's a place for Instagram. There's a place for social media. And, and if you're really about the lifestyle brand, like treat your Instagram like your business, right? But you've got to have like that touch with real people. Like you've got to have real people out there helping you to grow your work before you get to the place of having your work promoted by the million followers, right? Like you need the small community almost to build the big community, right? And so it was like, where are you with your newsletters? Like, where are you? Because this was definitely before pandemic, because the world was like open and it was just like, what are you doing with those experiences? Like, don't just rely on social media or Instagram. And I'll never forget, she said, because what if Instagram just goes away? Like, do you have the emails of all those people who are taking part in your Instagram page? Like, do you have that as opposed to having like a hard newsletter? And that, number one, I did have a robust newsletter list, right? But at the time I wasn't using it as much. And I was like, you know what, that is absolute currency that I'm just letting sit there, from a business perspective, I'm just letting it sit there. So, I started doing my newsletters more and just engaging with the community more. It's like people that are just waiting for you to give them information. And I just wasn't using it. So it made me think about that, number one, but then bigger than that, like, literally the next day was that day that like Instagram went down and was like down for like a whole day. And if it wasn't the whole day, it was like a good chunk and portion of the day. And it was like, and that's exactly what it was. Like if it had just stayed gone, right? And your whole customer base was tied to that, like, what would you do? I remember seeing recently, this young brother, and I say young because he's like 30, 31. And, he's got his whole social media influence thing with his wife and his kids. And he, did this post. I don't follow him, but I just kind of saw on the Explore page. And he's like, yeah, like I did it. I left corporate world to become a social media influencer. And I was just like, say what? Like, and I know that's the world that we're in, but I was just like, wow, but then I had to check myself because I'm like, well, I'm sure that's how my family or somebody in this world felt about you gonna quit your job to teach yoga. Like, word, but for me, yoga was like tangible and I knew what I was doing, but the social media influencing thing is like, just not my knowledge base. And so I have that same reaction to somebody else, like, you're gonna do what? Like, because all I would think is what that teacher said that one time. What if it all goes away? Then what are you gonna do? Like, in my mind with yoga, it's like there's still this tangible thing to offer, but who am I? I don't even have a TikTok. I refuse to have a TikTok. So who am I? And so it's just like, so anyway, I've kind of just gotten into this whole social media thing and I didn't mean to, but I have a feeling there were some gems in there. So hopefully there was something there, a nugget you were able to hold on to. I want to get back though to the idea of paying it forward, right? And I got into that social media sort of rant, just talking about trying to build in that world when you're trying to just be acknowledged, for your work. And social media can be a place that makes you feel like you're not acknowledged, depending on how it pans out, And so, if I'm having one of those days, or like I was excited to post something and I didn't get the response I thought, or if I'm having, just a day where I'm like, oh man, like, this kid's tuition's coming up, I gotta, it's just, I'll be in those spaces. And then it's like, man, maybe I should still be at my corporate job because, whatever, or maybe I should just, and then, like I said, something beautiful comes through and reminds me to keep doing the work. And so that's when I say, like, I have to remember why I stepped out to do this in the first place. And there is an episode, a couple of episodes back, that's I call it Keep Going, remember why you started, because it's that line is from a larger quote I found right when I had quit the corporate world. And it was like, it's a whole quote. I usually know the whole thing off the top of my head, but I'm like drawing a blank right now. It's not about perfect. It's about effort. And when you keep applying that effort every single day, that's where change happens. That's where transformation occurs. Keep going. Remember why you started. And so, it's the remember why you started that I have to come back to. And when you stay in a place of service, right? Like, yeah, we got to get money to pay the bills and the kids' tuition and to pay our rent or to buy a home or just to live life comfortably, right? And that's another thing. And we'll get into that in another episode, like giving yourself permission to want a better life, and to want the nice things. Like, maybe you want a minimalist lifestyle and that's great. But like, if you kind of like, well, I want to be comfortable. I want to experience, certain things, like being okay with that, like when I became a yoga teacher, there was like a whole side of me that I just kind of put away. Some of it because I felt like, I'm just cutting all ties to anything that feels like 9 to 5 Rachel, so get rid of all these suits. But there was some things I just push down, there's things I have a personal affinity for, and those things still pop up because they're part of who I am. And I realize, like, I got to give air to those things. I got to, you know what I mean? Like, just give room for all parts of who I am. Maybe I don't need to indulge all parts, but at least give room for it, right? So giving yourself permission to, like, want more, giving yourself permission to want a prosperous life, an abundant life, giving yourself, like, permission for that, right? So yeah, it's okay to want those things, right? But when I say being of service, it's like just offering your work, right? So no matter what you do, if there is a way to provide an offering for free, maybe it's something that you record once and upload to a place where people can have access to it, or maybe you do a free workshop that invites people in to see how you do. Like, I have a really good friend and a really good yoga student who are both, like, into sewing and stuff. So, like, maybe you have, like, a workshop one day where people can just kind of come in for 30 minutes and watch and ask questions, or it's just whatever it is, like, just doing stuff from the heart, especially when you are really committed to building your business as your lifestyle brand. Like, this is the work I love to do, and I'm going to offer it to the world in exchange for, the world, giving me what I need to keep providing the work, right? It's an exchange. And I actually started doing that. If people pay attention, to some of my marketing, I moved from saying cost to exchange, because it really is. And it's still a mentality that I'm building. But when that was first really broken down to me, that, like, money is just energy and it's an energy exchange, like, it's easy for somebody to say that has a lot of money, number one. Like, when you are trying to pay bills and you feel like your back's against the wall, it's like, no, money's like a physical thing I need right now. But when you understand it from the perspective of, like, and I'm saying this for my creatives who are still in that place of pricing and valuing yourself, and the pricing having you come to face with, like, shit, do I really value what I offer to this world? Do I really value myself? Because I have been there, and I'm still there in a lot of ways when it comes to things that I might want to offer that might just have a little bit of a higher price tag. You know what I mean? Like, I might feel sheepish or bad, but it's like, but no, it's like, it's really worth that. Like, I know, what it costs for me to do the work, to prepare, to do whatever, the human, all of that. And that's what it is. But it can make you come face to face with valuing, how you value yourself, right? And so in trying to really shift the narratives I have around that mindset, for me, when this idea of, like, money is energy and it's an exchange, it just made sense to me of, like, yeah, like, I'm giving you something that you need, you want, you're looking for, and here I am able to provide it. And so in exchange, you pay for that service, and that enables me to keep continuing to give you the service, right? And sometimes the exchange doesn't have to be money, right? Go back to old school bartering. There's so many yoga teachers that I'm like, hey, I'll give you a class for a class. Like, we definitely do that in the yoga world, like class for class. I'd love to come to your retreat. Like, maybe I can help out behind the scenes, or, do a hands-on assist while you teach, and you get, like, a discount, or you get your flight covered, so they're bartering, right? Like, it's an exchange, right? So in some of my marketing, I've moved from cost to exchange, because that's really what it is. And it helps you as the provider remember that. And it also helps the person receiving your offering remember that. Like, this is an exchange. Like, if I don't do my part, then yeah, let me know what that cost was to you, you know what I mean, of, like, you investing in me and me not fulfilling my part. Like, let me know that so that I can do better, or whatever the case may be, make it right. But it's a reminder for both parties involved. Like, this is an exchange. Like, you're giving me something and I'm giving you something in return, And so, so when I really started to understand that, I'm still understanding that. So it's not, again, to make light of, like, especially in the world we live in, this Western culture, you need money. You need money to live. And especially if you live in the Northeast, you definitely need money to live. Or if you live in like San Francisco or something, right? Like the certain parts of California. So it costs to live. And so it would almost be trite to say, oh, it's just energy, but in a way, it's just energy, right? And so when you can get yourself to that place, or try to wrap your arms around that understanding, maybe that frees up the space in your mind to say, okay, well, then I'm willing to offer some of my stuff for free, even if it's just an Instagram live, or it's, just insight, like again, into my world, like how I do what I do. Because when you come from that place of service, when you remember why you started and you stay true to that, if why you started was to make billions of dollars, that's one thing. But, I guess I'm just speaking to the creatives like me, you know what I mean? Like that are just like, man, like, yeah, I want success, and I want to be prosperous, but I'm just trying to carve out my little niche in this world. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to be comfortable. I just want to feel like my work is seen, like I'm doing something and my work is seen, right? And if I get billions of dollars, great. But so just that, just speaking to that audience. So whoever this resonates with, right? And yeah, because when you move from that place of service, it's, it's just like, even when you're not an entrepreneur or a creative, quote unquote, right? Like just being human, right? You're having a shitty day, when you feel like the world is like dumping on you, right? Like, yeah, there are days where you're just like, fuck it, I'm gonna throw the blanket over my head and hide out until I feel better, right? And you gotta do that sometimes. You gotta have those moments, right? But then there are days when you feel like that, and it's said that the best way to turn that around is to do something for somebody else, to kind of get yourself out of your shit and in a place of doing something for somebody else, right? And it doesn't mean not acknowledging what you're feeling or what you're going through, but it does mean not letting yourself get stuck in that place and always feeling like everything is against you, right? So how can you shift that? And we're often told as humans, giving to others is the best way to shift an attitude. You know what I mean? Like volunteering, doing something to get out of where you are and just align yourself with what somebody else is going through, or somebody else's challenges, or taking what you're going through and then transforming that to be of support, to somebody else who may be going through something similar, right? So we're told that as humans, or, we're told that somewhere along the way, at least like, yeah, like give to others as a way to get out of your shit. And so it's that same sort of mentality with when you are creative or an entrepreneur, with your offering that you're giving to the world, like have moments where you just do the work, for free or for donation or for $1, or, especially if you are kind of just, if anything like what I say resonates with you in terms of like, yeah, I'm on the right path. I'm still building. I'm still trying to figure things out. Like, I'm not at the beginning, but I'm not all the way, where I want to be. And so I'm still having those run-in moments. And it's like, yeah, just do the work, because when you keep going and remember why you started, right? And we take off the money, we take off all the attachments and just let it be like the fun of doing what we do. You know what I mean? It's like what I talked about last week with joy. It's like bringing that energy back to the work. Again, it is a balance between, okay, I'm working this for a reason, right? I chose this path for a reason. I chose this path because I want this to be the path that provides me viable income to live comfortably and take care of myself and my family, right? Like I chose this knowing that this would happen, unless you did it part-time. But if you chose it like as a full-time thing, maybe you have a part-time job for supplemental income like I have, but the focus is always like nothing is going to come before this. Like, you know what I mean? Like I love my part-time job and I'm grateful for my part-time job. And I've taken on, little extra hours here and there over the years. But when I have been offered like, hey, do you want to do something more full-time? I've frankly said no, because I'm like, I know the vision that I'm committed to, and I need more of my time to go to that. that's why I feel like I'm in a place of success, because I can say no. I can't say no to the part-time income. Well, I could, but I don't want to, because I want to make sure my kids' tuition is paid. Okay. And plus the part-time job actually aligns very greatly with the work I'm offering in this world. So it's a beautiful, again, exchange. It's just a beautiful space. So it's like, why rock that boat? When Rachel Voss Yoga and Find Your Free gets to a place where it's like, okay, now even the hours that I'm giving to the part-time job, like I need those back. When I get to that place, I'll do what I need to do accordingly. But right now it kind of feels like, don't just rock the boat. You know what I mean? Like it's a nice situation. It's virtual. It supports your work. It's all good. Right. So, but for those of us who are working, to do this full time, right? Like it's tough on the mind to constantly be thinking pricing and income and profit and gross and, all of these things. And it's like, let's just put that down for just a second, not away, just down, and just get into the work again, get into why you did what you did in the first place. And when you come from that place of joy, when you come from that place of service, when you come from that place of just offering from the heart, that's when you get a call from a client, a student, an observer who's just like, I think that what you're doing is really dope and I want to support your community, and you get a donation, or, you just get whatever it is that you need, which is the recognition and the support, but on a larger and more spiritual level, a sign from the universe that you are on the right path, keep going and remember why you started in that way. So when you pay it forward in your work and your offerings, I guarantee you something is going to come back and pay it forward to you. Again, it's an exchange, and yeah. And so, I'm just kind of reflecting on that, because I'm just, just over the years, I've almost been committed to like what I call karma. Well, it's called karma yoga, which is like just yoga from the heart, like not tied to money. I've almost been more committed to karma yoga than anything else. And that tells me, the beauty of it is like there was a point in my life where somebody would ask me the question, like, what is the one thing you could do for the rest of your life but not get paid for it? And there was a point where I could not answer that question. I was like, I don't know. But now I have an answer to that question. I love to talk about yoga and teaching yoga. And, when somebody says their back hurts, I'm like, oh my God, you can do this stretch. You can do this thing. Teaching yoga is not where it ends for me, though, growing into this podcast, eventually growing into having more published works as an author, just different areas where I want to grow, but the vision, frankly, is to grow those areas so that those spaces become the financially viable places that enable me to always teach the yoga for free, because yoga is that thing. It's a thing. I'm sure as I continue to grow and develop, I'll come into other things. I'm going to catch myself right there. It's yoga, yeah, but I think I just love to share healing. Like, oh, this can help. I learned this, whenever I learn about like an herb or a book, I'm just like, always jumping on the phone, sharing a post. Like, I found this thing that helped me and now I want to share it, with you. So yoga, healing, like that is something I could do for free. And so, that's the karma, that's the service. And so it's like, how do I grow these other aspects of the work that I want to do of my business, to support me enough that I can continue to offer the yoga for free? Because I always want yoga, the asana, the physical practice, or even a discussion and philosophy of it, right? Whatever it is, to be accessible, to be, I don't want it to ever feel like this is not for me, or I can't find a teacher that looks like me, or their bodies don't look like mine. And that's why I love my community, right? It is such a reflection of so many different shapes, sizes, colors, ages, and that's why for a long time it was really, really, really hard for me to kind of determine what my target market was, because who was constantly showing up, there wasn't like, outside of me finally identifying, okay, yeah, it's all women, or primarily women, because I did have a couple of male students that were very, very, very committed to the community, and committed to the practice. But, outside of like, okay, it's women, it was very hard to narrow it down from there, because the representation that I would see time and time and time again was just this beautiful landscape, of different types of women. And I ultimately whittled it down to, my brother loves when I use that word, whittle. But I ultimately whittled it down to just women ages, I think I say 28 to 64. Like, I don't get into like black, white, this, that. Like, it's just women ages 28 to 64. Because, I feel like I have something to share with, women who are get into that 30-year-old space, and that's a place where you're kind of just starting to really figure things out. You're kind of like putting your 20s down a little bit, still feeling vivacious and all of this, but you may start kind of questioning your life a little bit. What am I doing? All that type of stuff. And I feel like I can still be of support to someone in that area, but I also can provide guidance to somebody who's older than me. I'm 43. So somebody who's maybe in their 50s or 60s, and they're entering their second or third chapter of their lives, and they're looking for some guidance or community or a space where they feel seen and heard and valued, and my community is a reflection, of that. And so that's why for a long time, when people would say, what's your target audience? I'd just be like, women. And it, I'd always be told, oh, it's too broad, it's too specific. But it was really hard for me to narrow it down, because it really is a beautiful reflection of just a variety, just this variety of different, like I said, shapes, sizes, colors, So yeah, where was I going with that? Y'all know every once in a while I like get off on a tangent, and then I'm like, what was my original point? But I'll tell you what, I'll take that as a sign to start to wind down this conversation anyway. And if anybody is listening, that picked up on whatever point I was trying to go on, and they're like, hey, Rachel, I want to know where you were going with that. Like, email me, text me if you know me that way, DM me or whatever. And I'll pick up on that thought. So I'll just use this. I'll use losing my train of thought, so to speak, as a way to just go ahead and kind of begin to wind this episode down. Like I said last week, the only thing with doing, I like this early Monday morning space, but then, like I said last week, the podcast studio is also my love's office, work from home office. And so I got to get out of here so he can get in a little bit. So I'll go ahead and start winding this down. So, but yeah, just paying it forward, moving from the heart, being of service, especially if you're, just still in that place of building, of trying to figure things out. If you're in a place of like, I feel like I'm on the right path, but I'm confused right now. Like, I don't know, maybe I should just quit. You know what I mean? Like, when you feel that, offer something, give yourself room to feel what you feel. I will never be one to say, oh, just, deny that feeling. Give yourself room to feel what you feel, but then you have a choice, of how you respond to it all. And if the choice has to be, no, I need to stop, I need to pause, I need to lay down, I need to whatever from that aspect, say from like a self-care aspect, honor that. But if it's like, all right, I just need to shift this energy. I need to, you know what I mean? I need to turn it into something else that gets me out of like this cloud that I'm in right now, right? Offer something for free, and don't worry about who shows up, how many likes it gets, how much money you're going to get, like taking all of that off and just doing the work, and then watch how the universe responds. And maybe it's just a reminder of like, yes, this is why I am doing this, right? Or if it is like just a sudden, financial donation or whatever the case may be, somebody calling you and saying, hey, you know what? I was referred to your business and I'm looking for, to bring you on as a corporate partner, the universe will respond. So that is why I call this episode Pay It Forward, because, using what was given to me, is that reminder of what I am looking to offer to the world, right? I just want to pay it forward by way of creating this healing space, by creating, again, yoga that is accessible. Ever since I've gone virtual, the first from late March 2020 to December 31st, 2020, I held a free meditation every Monday. Every Monday. Maybe 1 or 2 Mondays, a couple Mondays here and there. Like I couldn't hold it for whatever reason, but it was like I showed up every Monday. When people started losing jobs and getting laid off, I've got emails and text messages and just kind of like, I need something. I'm suffering right now. I don't have much money. Could I? And it was just like, come on, you know what I mean? And so I just was really committed to, more than ever, last year and still now, to having this space be accessible. And so for someone to recognize that and to enable me to offer, my work for free in a way that supports the community and supports me, it's a beautiful thing and a beautiful reminder from the universe that I am so grateful for. So move from the heart, be of service, pay it forward, not with the expectation of it coming back to you, but just watching how it does. All right, lovely. So with that, let's go ahead and begin to wind or bring this episode to a close. First, we'll just take a moment to find a deep breath. So if you want to just settle in nice and comfortably wherever you are, if you're in a chair, resting your feet on the floor, sitting with a tall spine, maybe you are lying on your back and just feeling your shoulders relax, just wherever you are, sitting nice and comfortably, lengthening your spine, maybe closing the eyes if that feels good. And let's together take a deep breath in. And exhale out. And this passage that I'm going to share today is from Melody Beattie's Journey to the Heart. Y'all know I love, love, love this book. And this passage is called Serve Gently from Your Heart. Service, gentle service that comes from the heart. That's the theme, the rhythm of life, work, love. See the trees, the grass, the flowers, the mountains, the ocean. Look and really see. See how effortlessly they serve. Their very life is service. Know that your life too is service. Let service arise naturally from your life. Commit to your growth, to loving yourself and following your heart. Commit to joy, passion, gratitude for your life and all your lessons. Commit to honestly sharing and expressing who you are, what you feel, what you're going through. Don't worry about what you will do to serve. Focus instead on loving yourself. Let your service arise from that. Acts that spring from desire, joy, and inspiration. Cherish your life. It's a gift, not just to yourself, but to others, to the entire universe. Each star shines its light down from the heavens, making up the twinkling galaxy of the Milky Way. Each star is important and serves by playing its part, naturally, gently, by being what it is. You too have a part to play in the universe. Your part is to serve others by being yourself. Service is your path. Let service spring gently, naturally, from who you are. Radiate your gifts to the world by loving and sharing yourself. So I love, love, love that passage. And as I said last week, lovelies, even though I love this early Monday morning space, I may trip over my words just because it's still early and the mind is still a little bit cloudy. So forgive me for tripping over my words a little bit as I read that. But I love that passage because, again, it just is that reminder about service and serving from the heart, and that even if you're not, say, on the entrepreneurial path, or you don't consider yourself a creative, right? You're like, hey, I'm just, I'm working my 9 to 5. I love my job. You know what I mean? I offer my skill sets. You know what I mean? I offer what I feel I can offer, like that's where I am, right? Like, and so if it's like I don't really have a thing I feel like I can offer, yeah, you do. And that passage is a reminder of that. You have yourself. Our offerings are just an extension of who we are, like I love people. I love making people happy. I love taking care of people. I love looking out for people. So that's who I am. Like that's who I've known myself to be as a kid, which is why in my 30s, I'm like, I cannot keep stuffing myself into this 9 to 5 box that is not allowing me to fulfill who I am, right? So teaching yoga is just an extension of who I am, right? Being a healer, it may be who I am in sort of the spiritual archetype type of thing, but in this plane, this world, this, like where we are right now, this earthly plane, like it's an extension of who I am. So all you have to do is just be yourself and give us that, right? Like we are enough, and if we have the talent to draw, to dance, to teach, to heal, to whatever, beautiful. But that doesn't mean, because I've been in that space where I was like, I'm not a creative, but I want to be one. I hadn't tapped into my spaceship, right? But I still had something to offer from the 9 to 5. I was educated. I had, just opinions and, you know what I mean? I still had something to offer. My presence was still something to offer. So if you feel like, okay, well, I don't have this artwork to share with the world or whatever, I don't have a class I can share with the world, just show up and be yourself. And the best way you can show up is, as the passage says, to love yourself, to pour joy into yourself, to pour that love into yourself. The more you pour that into yourself, the more you're able to give that to the world, right? And just give from the heart, not with expectation, not with the idea of like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get something back, but just to serve and to see how that creates more joy and to see how that makes a difference in somebody's life, right? So that, because like I say, it's not about being an influencer, right? I mean, yeah, you want to influence people to do things that are healthy or positive or, for their good mental well-being or whatever. But it's not about being an influencer. Not to me. It's about being an inspiration, And I've always said that, like, before, I remember it was like high school. I would always say, like, when I die, I just want one person to say, man, she changed my life. And it took me a long time to find the path that made me feel like I was doing that kind of work. But it doesn't mean that until I got there wasn't somebody's life I impacted. Like I might have impacted just my mom's life alone, just by being a daughter she always wanted, right? Like, so, but yeah, but once I really got myself on the path of fulfilling or feeling like I was living in my purpose, it was like, I just want to inspire others to do the same, to find their free, to be happy, So yeah, it's about inspiring, not just influencing. And so love yourself, inspire yourself, pour joy into yourself so that you can be a joyful, loving inspiration to others, paying it forward. All right, lovelies. So with that, we'll go ahead and bring this to an end by saying, may you be happy, may you be free, may you be peaceful, easeful, useful, and joyful. The light in me honors the light in each of you. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.